Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR. I've got a lot to talk about going on in the Big Ten. Welcome to the Big Ten Huddle, where we cover every single Big Ten football team, talk about all of them. We cover every single one. Tonight, you've got me and Big Jeff, JR and Big Jeff here for the Big Jeff's Insights episode. We're going to be going through Big Jeff's top half of the Big Ten record and standing predictions. Jeff has gone through the data. He's looked at everything from last season to the coming season, and he's going to deliver his predictions backed by data. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat. We have one table mainly, but we'll have other tables we can reference as well if you're here on YouTube watching, and feel free to ask those questions in the chat. We are also streaming on YouTube, not just Thursday nights at 9 p.m., but also Sunday and Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. So check us out then. Catch us on podcast Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday every single morning as well. Like, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, helps us out. Jeff, you excited to deliver these predictions to everybody?
Yeah, it means we're getting close. So very excited. The other big news, Jared knows this, but purchase tickets to the game of the season. Obviously, the Kennesaw State at Indiana game in week 2. Everyone's talking about it, but my son goes to Kennesaw State, so we're making the road trip. And I might get to meet, hopefully, JR, who lives close to Bloomington. And it'll be big. It'll be like, when Churchill met Roosevelt, right, in the late 30s. It'll be that kind of significance when JR and Big Jeff meet, I think. What do you think, JR?
Yeah, that sounds about right to me. So I'm going to be meeting Zack up this weekend. He's going to be in town, so I'm going to meet up with him and then meet up with you during game week. What week is that? Is that 2 or 3?
Week two. Week 2.
Week 2.
Well,
Okay.
there's week 0 and then 1 and 2, so it's week
Right.
2. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, that's gonna be fun. We're looking forward to it. Let's see who we got in the chat with us here. We got Philip with the ILL. Illini Bubba is finishing off with the INI. There we go. Ali Babwa says, "What's good, gentlemen?" That's a good friend of the show. Mike, he says, "Jeff rocking the IU gear. Is that a hint at what he's gonna say tonight?" Jeff, is that a hint?
So the good news is Indiana is projected by me to be in the top half of the Big Ten. Yes. So we will be talking Indiana. And for those who don't know, I'm a 1990 graduate of Indiana.
There you go. There you go. So Big Ten grad, that's for sure. Awesome. Brenton says Loxley was just interviewed during the Ravens broadcast. I'll be honest, I'm not watching the preseason game right now. I was watching TV with my wife before I came up here to the studio. So wouldn't surprise me. Any thoughts there, Jeff?
Hey, any promotion, players are from the DMV are watching it, right? So any publicity is good publicity, I guess.
There you go. All right, good stuff. All right, well, we have Jeff's picks to get to, his predictions. He's gone game by game in the entire Big Ten. We're just going to look at the top half today to make sure we have everything to look at and predict. If your team is not in the top half, next week we will get to that. We're going to try to only talk about the teams in the top half today. So if you have thoughts or questions or anything like that about teams in the bottom half, we would appreciate it if you wait till next week. If your rival's in the top half, maybe just grill us on those and see the thoughts there. So, Jeff, why don't you take it away? You want me to put the table up?
Yeah, before you do, actually, so just background, predicting games now with how the rosters have more dramatically changed year to year than they used to. It's harder than ever. So, it's very difficult to go through these games. I did go, like JR said, literally have spreadsheet every game. I'm not going to be going into that level of detail tonight, but I am going to be speaking to, what I think the overall record is overall and in the Big Ten, and then giving a couple reasons why fan bases should be optimistic about their team's record for the year, and then some reasons why they might want to be maybe a little pessimistic. And then always with Big Jeff's insight on Thursday, backed with some pretty good data that are in a couple tables, along with all my picks, are on my website currently. It's not a full written article on bigjeffsfootball.com, but at least you can reference some of the data that I gathered to help me kind of form opinions on how these teams were going to do. I definitely gave a lot of thought to it and looked at a lot of different data in this, even though I'm not going to be presenting all that data tonight. And so like JR said, tonight, this is going to be 2 parts, but this week is the who actually end up finishing what I would consider in the top 9 of the Big Ten. And then we'll cover the other 9 next week. All right, so let's get to that table.
All right, love it. There you go.
Okay, so on the left here, well, you can see the teams listed 1 through 9 in order. We're going to be talking about each one of these during the podcast tonight. Anything in green, if you're familiar, anything in heavier green is more favorable information for that team. Light green is still favorable, and anything in like tan or dark tan, that's actually more unfavorable information for the team. So just to highlight, Indiana and Illinois, their 5-year recruiting average, they're kind of the anomalies here in the top 9. Every other team listed here has at least a 5-year big national recruiting average of at least 33, except for Indiana and Illinois. And to me, it speaks to what a great job those 2 coaches and coaching staffs have done. Bert Bielema, of course, for Illinois, Kurt Signetti for Indiana. But you're going to hear it throughout the night when we get to those, the depth of talent that those teams might have might not be as good as some of their other competitors here in the top 9. And then on the right side, even though I'm not going to talk about JR and Zack's picks from a podcast a few weeks ago, they made their choices. So I thought it'd be pretty interesting to layer in their predictions next to mine, just for everyone to see. And then in the light blue rows there, those are where all 3 of us are exactly aligned on the records for those teams. So Penn State and Indiana, we all predicted the exact same things. For all the other teams, we're different, at least in this top 9 here. So with that, JR, I'm gonna talk to Ohio State first, JR, and then I'm gonna get your thoughts on what I review. And just for Ohio State, my prediction 10-2, 10-2 overall, 8-1 in the Big Ten. They have an SPLE plus rank of from Bill Connolly of 1. So I do have some statistics in here for those listening in this table. And so they have high projections for sure based on the talent level and recent success. Bottom line, I have them losing to Texas in a really close game. I just think Arch Manning will hit the ground running more than Julian Sayin, who I anticipate to be the starter. And I think that will be the slight difference. As usual, people will overreact to this first game. I just encourage against that because teams are going to look a lot different at the end of the year than they did to start, especially when you're starting young quarterbacks. I have Ohio State beating Penn State at home. Very close game. But then actually stumbling to somebody unexpected. I end up choosing Washington in week 5 in a big road upset. Early on, I chose because I just think the Washington young quarterback has more experience than a Julian Sayin, and that can be the difference on the road. That will be one of the first big road environments for Sayin. So some reasons for optimism, the recruiting prowess of Ohio State. Their 4-year average is number 4 in the nation, or 5-year average is number 4 in the nation. And so, yes, they lost a lot of players, and there was much made about that. But the reality is that meant other players are waiting in the wings, and they're more seasoned, and they're older, and they're chomping at the bit. People like defensive end Caden Curry to get out there and show what they can do with more of a starting role. The other thing is the Big Ten schedule for Optimistic is not that difficult. The teams they're playing this year went 30-43 last year in the Big Ten. They don't play Oregon, Indiana, and USC and Iowa, and all 4 of those are 4 of the top 7 teams, according to FanDuel, for their Big Ten favorite odds. And that's in the table there. You could see the third column, I guess, is the Big Ten championship odds. They do have the best odds, though, according to FanDuel, at plus 195. The final reason for optimism, 2 unicorn players no other team has. They have the consistent best offensive player in the nation, of course, wide receiver Jeremiah Smith, and then defensive players, safety Caleb Downs. Those elite players sometimes can win a game by themselves, with a big clutch play near the end, similar to what Smith did against Notre Dame. So I just think those unicorn players are unique, and Ohio State has two of the best. So reasons for pessimism: rat poison. It's a term Nick Saban used, but for half year now, they've been hearing how great they are. They won the title. Congratulations, blah, blah, blah. Will they come out with that same hunger and edge? And it's really hard to repeat. Only Bama and Georgia have repeated in the last 20 years. It's just not easy to keep your edge. Number two for pessimism, questions with the new coordinators. How good are they, and how quickly will they get their units rolling? So you got Matt Patricia as the new defensive coordinator. And of course, Brian Hartline really will be probably for the first time making play calls. And so those are just unknowns. They're good coaches, but those are unknowns. And then finally, just the young starting quarterback, Julian Sayin, even if they go with the Lincoln Keenholds, either way, very young quarterbacks. It's hard to win a national championship with a first-year quarterback. So those are some reasons for pessimism. And again, I just see a surprising loss, but I see them beating Penn State and then losing to Texas in a close one. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are down on Ohio State this year. They're number one on SP Plus. They have, if not the second, I think the third best odds to win the national championship. They have the best odds on FanDuel to win the Big Ten there. The best ones, because we're looking at plus here. So plus 195 for Ohio State on FanDuel to win the Big Ten there. I don't see it the way everybody else does. Now, I do think it would be interesting if Ohio State goes 10-2, and because of their schedule, they could possibly finish as low as 5th in the Big Ten. If there's some other 10-2 teams, you're banking on, I think, 3 or 4 at the very least 10-2 teams there in order for that to happen. But I don't see Ohio State having any less than 9 wins, and I think 9 would be a pretty bad season for them. And I know some people will say, well, JR, you're biased. I get that, but I also look at this team. I also look at the way that Ohio State is recruited over the years, what Ryan Day has done with first-year starting quarterbacks in the past. I don't think people realize, but Ryan Day's best work is with first-year starting quarterbacks. So whether it's Lincoln Keenholz this season or Julian Sayin, I tend to believe it's going to be Julian Sayin. I don't see it the way some people are that are predicting Ohio State to go 8-4 or 9-3. I can see 9-3 happening. I do think their floor is 8-4, but I don't think either of those are likely enough to pick them. Watch me be wrong and that happens, but I do think it's interesting that Zack picked Ohio State to go 10-2 and they finished 5th in the Big Ten. I do think that we need to take that kind of stuff into account when we're thinking about these playoff formats and everything. Zach and I talked about that on the last episode. So if you want to check that out, you can check that out over on the podcast feed or in the YouTube feed. But, the Big Ten, it's a more competitive league than it's been in the past. And just because there are 3 teams that seem to have the best odds and are kind of ahead of other people doesn't necessarily mean those teams are all going to finish in the top 3.
Yeah, good points. Let's jump to Penn State. Basically, I have them 11-1 overall, 8-1 in the Big Ten with that sole loss at Ohio State. Their SP Plus rank is 3rd, and their FanDuel odds are 2nd best next to Ohio State to win the Big Ten. So plus 220. So right there, close to Ohio State. Reasons for optimism. We've all heard it all off season long. Experience and talented NFL level quarterback in Drew Aller. Top 5 Big Ten teams, of the top 5 Big Ten teams, only Penn State really has that seasoned quarterback. So that gives them an edge there. If they were home versus Ohio State, I would be choosing them. And he was projected as a first-round pick. And so if he plays like that, that's really bodes well for Penn State. Second reason, just the experience and talented overall roster. They have 65% returning production. That's tied for 6th in the Big Ten. That's according to ESPN metric. And then they have star power, the best running back duel in the nation. Reminds me of Ohio State last year, Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. Maybe the best Big Ten offensive line. And then the defense, talented at all 3 levels with no glaring weaknesses. So just really a great roster. And then third reason for optimism, excellent coordinator. Some consider the tandem of Andy Kotelnicki as the offensive coordinator and then new DC Jim Knowles coming over from Ohio State as the best tandem in the Big Ten. So that bodes well for Penn State, and you hope, Kotelnicki, another year working with Aller, he can take him to the next step there and being a true star quarterback. So some reasons for pessimism, the Penn State talent is not as deep as people think. Their 5-year recruiting average is 13th in the nation. That's really good, but not as good as clearly Ohio State or Oregon, not even as good as Michigan. So, if they do have some key injuries, I think that really could impact them. Their starters clearly are excellent. Of the last 20 years, only 2 teams won a natty with worse 5-year recruiting rankings. That was 2016 Clemson with Deshaun Watson and 2010 Auburn with Cam Newton. So I know transfers impacts this though, right? So maybe that's a different dynamic here to say in the future, you don't have to have as good of recruiting rankings, but it still matters. Second one, JR, is Aller and James Franklin history of falling short in big games. Franklin 1-14 versus top 5 teams, 3-19 versus top 10 teams. I know Penn State fans are getting sick of it, but that's just the reality of it. And last year, they played 3 legit top 10 teams, and they were 0-3 against them. Oregon, Ohio State, and Notre Dame, 0-3. So, I think they can get over the hump. I'm not calling them to win a national title, but Aller needs to eliminate that inconsistency. And then the third thing is just as good as Jim Knowles is, there's time to install that defense. They're not just going to immediately hit the ground running and be awesome, even though they have really good personnel. He experienced some speed bumps at Ohio State in his first 2 years where they gave up some big plays against both Georgia and Michigan that really cost them those games in a national championship, frankly. So that's a question. But the bottom line is, they're pretty weak non-conference schedule. They do have only 4 home games, but their harder games are at home. And so I don't mean to be sounding negative about Penn State. I definitely see them, frankly, matching up again against Ohio State with both 8-1 records in the Big Ten. They'll meet up again in the Big Ten championship if things fall out as I predict. JR, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Penn State is honestly a pretty easy pick in the Big Ten this season. Either 12-0 or 11-1 is most likely for them. They could go 10-2 if they fall to Oregon and Ohio State, but I think they're too dedicated. They have too much talent. I just don't think that's going to happen this season. Now, tell me I'm wrong, but even if I am wrong, they're going to make the playoffs at 10-2, and they could very well do what Ohio State did last year and go on a run in the playoffs and win the whole thing. So I do think it's going to be interesting with Oregon at the beginning of the season with that Jim Knowles defense. Will Stein kind of had Jim Knowles' number a little bit in that game, but that game is also going to be at Penn State, and as we know, that's one of the best home field environments in all of college football. So, Penn State, to me, it's all about Drew Aller. It's all about James Franklin. What do they do in the clutch moments? What happens? Philip is singing the same tune I've been singing this entire time. Penn State is on Drew Aller. Can he make the clutch throws? I completely agree. I think that it's going to be most difficult to predict Penn State in the postseason. I think the regular season is pretty straightforward, and that's why you see the blue line there of us all in sync with the 11-1 prediction.
I agreed on that. Exciting for them, though. I mean, they're right there.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so number 3, I have Oregon. So I have them going 10-2 overall, 7-2 in the Big Ten. Obviously, I said, Penn State would beat Oregon. You mentioned it. Dante Moore, young quarterback on the road, a whiteout. That's just going to be a tough environment for that quarterback, despite how talented Oregon is. And then I have them falling to week 11 at Iowa. I just see them tripping up somewhere else. These are hard to predict where, but Iowa is a tough place to play for sure. But they have the 3rd best FanDuel Big Ten Championships odds at plus 360. SP Plus loves them at number 7. And I could easily see them go 11-1. I wouldn't be surprised if they only lost to Penn State. For sure. It's very hard to project. So what are the reasons for optimism? Depth of talent, right? You see that 4-year recruiting average of 7. I mean, Dan Lanning, they have it rolling in recruiting, and they're bringing in great transfers as well. So what that says, they have a strong and deep roster, and that will bode well if they have some injuries. They'll have the skill, the players to step up for those injured players. Number 2, they should be great in the all-important trenches on both sides of the ball. So that going back to that recruiting that they have, Lindy's, the magazine I get, they rank them 7th best offensive line in the nation. And then on the defensive line, they rank them very high as well. Oh, number 4 in the nation on the D line. So offensive line going to rely on a couple transfers, Nevada transfer Isaiah World and Emmanuel Pregnon from USC. And then the D line is going to also have a transfer in Bear Alexander to add to the really good talent they already have on that line. So just strong in the trenches and then strong at the skill positions. The offense should stay high powered. Lindy's ranked them as the number 5 in the nation backfield, led by Tulane transfer Mekhi Hughes. He had 2 years, he had 2,800 yards and 22 TDs. And then they have really talented wide receiver group. They are hurt by Evan Stewart getting injured, but 5-star DeCorian Moore is coming in, expected to be a real difference maker. Let's go to reasons for pessimism for Oregon. Inexperienced quarterback in Dante Moore. Will there be a drop-off? Let's face it, the last 2 seasons, they had Bo Nix and Dylan Gabriel, 2 of the most experienced quarterbacks in the history of NCAA football, basically. And those guys played great. So there are going to be some growing pains. And Moore is really the reason why I have the 2 potential losses. But don't get me wrong, I have Oregon making the playoffs with those 2 losses. And then they do have a tough Big Ten schedule. The teams they play in the Big Ten last year went 44-37. So that's good. And then the other big thing, 9 games, 4 home games, 5 away games. That's a big deal, right? I think that's not talked about enough. And that's one of my key metrics I looked at across all these. And then, I have them losing to Iowa, but also they play at Washington, who plays really well at home as well. And then home games against Indiana and USC, I see them winning. So, not an easy non-conference schedule. They need to bring more and get them up to speed. Like I said, would not be surprised if they also went 11-1, only losing to Penn State. JR, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, so who were your 2 losses for Oregon again?
So the second loss would be at Iowa late in the season.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think Oregon should only lose 1 game, but you have a number of, tempting games for somebody to pick there. You have Indiana, you have at Iowa, you have USC, and at Washington. Like I said, ideally, Oregon should win all those games, and I think if this is the team that reloads like we think it is, then they will win all of those games. However, we should not overlook Indiana, we should not overlook Iowa, we should not overlook USC or Washington, and quite frankly, we shouldn't overlook Minnesota either. We saw what Minnesota was able to do against Penn State last year. Now, I think it's a little bit more difficult because it's at home for Oregon. Minnesota had that game at home, but that's still not as far of a road trip as it is for some other Big Ten teams, so I don't necessarily put it on that same level. Still really far, so that needs to be considered, but not, it's not like a East Coast to West Coast trip like you get with some teams. So, I think Oregon is a difficult team to predict here. I picked them to go 11-1 because that's just what they should do. But when you take into account the craziness of college football and everything else, I mean, this team's plus 360 to win the Big Ten on FanDuel right now. This should not be a team that anybody is slouching on. This should not be a team that anybody is discarding as a team that can't win the Big Ten, especially with those trenches, with what they've got. As long as Dante Moore is fine, I think he'll be fine. I don't know if he'll be anything spectacular. I don't know if he'll be Dylan Gabriel next year, but as long as he's fine, I think they have the playmakers for the most part. They have very good running back in Mekhi Hughes, and the trenches will be able to lead them to at least a double-digit win season, I would think.
Yeah, just before I go on the next one, if you notice, I have both Ohio State and Oregon losing to someone kind of unexpected. I'm basically saying counting on the Big Ten's middle tier teams to be stronger than they have been, to truly challenge the blue blood and the behemoths at the top. So we'll see if that happens, right? And when you have a 9-game season, it's just you're more likely to have that one time, especially when you're on the road, where you're a little off, and then you find yourself in a rock fight, and maybe you lose, right? So,
Yeah.
but it's
Well,
not.
and we also need to consider that, November is a really tough time too. It's November that is giving me some trepidation to pick Penn State to go 11-1. Like I said, they're going to be at least 11-1, 10-2. But even if they get that win over Oregon at the beginning, they still have to face Ohio State, Indiana, and Nebraska all in November. And if Nebraska is anything like what people think they can be, I mean, you have them here going what 9-3. If they're going to be a 9-3, close to a double-digit win team, that should not be a pushover game for Penn State by any means. And then you have to travel to Michigan State and to Rutgers, also teams that Penn State should take care of. I don't think they'll have any issues there with those, but you never know. Sometimes those road games and other tough games in between them can make a team have a hard time. I.e., Oregon last year against Wisconsin.
Yep. All right, so let's go to number 4, Michigan. I have them going 9-3 overall, 7-2 in the Big Ten. They're the 4th Big Ten team with an SP plus rating in the top 10, so they're right at number 10 for ESPN. But the difference is FanDuel Big Ten championship odds is it's 4th best in the Big Ten, but way behind Oregon. So Michigan's plus 1,000, Oregon was plus 360. So really, they're kind of in like a different tier. They're the first of the next tier teams, is the way I would say that, JR. And they're starting a true freshman quarterback, a really talented team. I'm saying 9-3. I hate the Oklahoma matchup for them in week 2, especially if they start Underwood. I really think they should start Mikey Keene, although I think Mikey Keene's maybe not healthy. I get, long-term, Underwood's the man. There's no doubt about it. And that's not a question of how good he is, but on the road against a team, and Oklahoma's weakness was not defense, and they're just a defensive-oriented team. So that's just a bad matchup for Michigan, I really feel. So I have that as a loss. And they also have them tripping up at Nebraska in week 4. So again, early on, Michigan losing, and then in a tight one to Ohio State at the end. Although, would it shock me if they beat Ohio State? No, because they're definitely have a mental edge over Ohio State right now. But 9-3 would be a very good season with a young quarterback like that. So reason for optimism, depth of talent. So their average 5-year recruiting class, 12th in the nation. That's excellent, even slightly better than Penn State. So that tells me they have the depth in general, right? I'm not saying they don't have any weaknesses. And Sharon Moore is recruiting better than Jim Harbaugh did by a little bit. So that's good. Number 2 reason for optimism for Michigan, returning production and strong defense. So they're returning 65% of their production, tied for 7th in the Big Ten. That's on the high end. And then being strong up front on defense is huge. Lindy's ranked their D-line 5th in the nation. They have edge Derek Moore, Rashawn Benny at tackle, some other talented transfers, and then backed up by a really good linebacker group, 5th best in the nation. And remember, last year, Michigan was 10th in the nation in overall defense. So very impressive. Finally, Michigan has the easiest Big Ten in-conference schedule by far. The combined teams they play this year had records of 27 and 54 from last year. Plus, they avoid projected top 10 teams, Penn State and Oregon. So, Michigan's 9-3 record is partially also driven by that schedule, but they're on the road at Oklahoma. So the overall schedule is not that easy. So it depends on how you look at their schedule, but certainly 7-2 in conference is reflective of the schedule. Reasons for pessimism, just freshman quarterback and questions at wide receiver. 5-star quarterback Bryce Underwood, but only Trevor Lawrence has led their team to a title in the last 20 years as a first-year freshman starting quarterback. So it's just hard to do that. It's hard to come in and light it up your first year. And then, the other difference is Lawrence had really strong NFL receivers to throw to. Michigan likely doesn't. They're hoping Donovan McCulley, who transferred from Indiana, didn't play this past year, hoping he becomes a true number 1. to give Underwood someone to throw to. Second, pessimism reason, offensive line concerns and the offense in general. Michigan, they only ranked 73rd in the nation in rushing last year. That's not very good. And then 130th in passing. But I would have thought that running with Khalil Mullings and everything would have been better, but it wasn't. So, they have a long way to go in their offense. And then the third is Sharon Moore is still learning on the job. This is not a dig at him, but when it's just your second year in head coaching and you're coaching at a pressure school like Michigan, he's learning on the job. So we need to be a little bit patient with Sharon Moore to really find out how good of a coach he's going to be. And I just think there's 3 big swing games for Michigan. JR, week 4 at Nebraska that I have as a loss. Week 7 at USC, that's a tough one. I have them winning that as Underwood starts to, get his legs underneath him. And then the final week at Ohio State, I have Ohio State winning, but I'm certainly not like, that's an easy win. Of course not. So those are 3 big swing games for Michigan for me.
Yeah, I do want to say sorry. I haven't been doing much with the chat, guys. You guys have been active and doing a good job, so I apologize. I'll get back to that. Illini Bubba says I hate Michigan has it so easy. I think he's referring to the schedule. I got to be honest. If we were doing a hot take subject or something like that, I think my hot take would be I think Michigan is actually going to finish with one of the top 5 hardest schedules in the Big Ten. If you look at this team, they have at Oklahoma, at Northwestern, at USC. If those teams are good, like people think they can be, now it's unlikely all 3 of them hit, but if all 3 of them are good, like some people think they can be, that's going to be really difficult there. You also have a tough rivalry game against at Michigan State. I know that's not going to give them very many points on the schedule, with those metrics and stuff, but that's one of the issues with these, strength of schedule things is that they don't factor in Michigan State and their improvement and Aiden Childs and how good he'll be and everything else and just the rivalry aspect of it all. So I think a lot of people are looking at that as a kind of a cupcake game for Michigan, and I just don't see it that way. And then also Northwestern, I get it. Northwestern, I'm not going to say they're good or anything like that, but Northwestern also got embarrassed by Michigan last year. What they were able to do was some of the best offense they played all season. I don't think David Braun lets that happen twice in a row. Northwestern has a much better defensive line than some people give them credit for, and this offensive line could be sneaky good. So I know that I haven't picked Northwestern to do very well, but I would not be surprised at all if this turns into a 7-5, maybe an 8-win team with a bowl win or something like that. And then you got Ohio State at the end. So while I'm with you, Jeff, the schedule looks really easy. I also recognize that sometimes these schedules are not looking as easy at the end of the season as they did at the beginning. And then also Britton said that he's not a true number 1. I believe he's talking about Donovan McCulley is when he brought that up there. I'm not necessarily saying that Northwestern will be good, Illini Bubba. I'm more saying that I think they're going to be a dangerous team. I think they're going to be a team that could sneak up on a couple teams. Better defensive line, better offensive line than some people give him credit for. And if Preston Stone hits, he could be a good quarterback for him.
Yeah, and I like this because this is all opinion. So Michigan plays the 3, what I call the bottom feeders. What FanDuel has is 30,000 plus 30,000 odds. So Maryland, Northwestern, and Purdue, they play all 3 of the bottom ones. In
November too.
Yeah. So, and I'm not aligned. Like Zack has Northwestern. I don't see it at all. I don't see Northwestern being very good. If Preston Stone hits, I think they can be decent, but they were horrible last year and not very good on defense either. But to your point, we thought Indiana last year had a pretty good schedule coming in, and it turned out it was one of the worst. It was the worst in the Big Ten. It was based on record, right? So to your point, JR, it could be different. I just, in my view, I think saying they have the easiest Big Ten schedule, I really believe that, but we'll see. We'll see.
Either them or Nebraska do. It's one of those two.
Yeah.
So, before we move on, do want to thank Steely Matt for reposting the stream there on Twitter. So, everybody, if you're on Twitter, or even if you're just watching on YouTube, pull out your phone and repost the stream over on Twitter. You don't even have to watch it over there, but if you repost it, definitely helps us out, and we appreciate that. All right, Jeff, we just talked about this team, USC. What are your thoughts there?
So I have them going 8-4 overall and 6-3 in the Big Ten. But given the talent, their average, I know I have the 5-year average, but their 3-year recruiting average is 13. They're recruiting right about where Michigan and Penn State are the last 3 years. So I believe they have more depth than people believe they have. I think this is the biggest sleeper team in the Big Ten. I have their 3 losses coming in a tough 3-game stretch. Week 5 at Illinois, Week 6 versus Michigan, actually losing at home. And then the challenge for USC is they have to play at Notre Dame, a top 10 team for sure, maybe a top 5 team. Otherwise, I'd have them 9-3 if they had a cupcake non-conference schedule. So that 8-4 maybe makes people think, oh, Jeff doesn't think highly of USC. That's factoring in they're going to lose, in my view, at Notre Dame. So reasons for optimism: favorable Big Ten schedule. They have 5 home games. They don't play Ohio State and Penn State, and also Indiana. So that's avoiding 3 of the top 5 teams in the Big Ten. Super talented wide receiver room. I think they have the second best receiver room in the Big Ten. Jacoby Lane, 6'4", 42-inch vertical. He could explode this year. He had 12 TDs. USC lost some receivers to transfers. It could be beneficial in that they're going to get the ball more to some of their playmakers. And their second playmaker, Mekhi Lemon, is a huge talent as well. They're NFL guys. If they stay healthy, those guys could have huge years, and I expect USC to have big plays. And then the third thing for optimism for USC, I expect to improve defense again under D'Anton Lynn, who's in his second year at USC. They went from 116th in the nation to 77th in total defense. That's a huge improvement. I see another significant improvement again this year. Reasons for pessimism. Again, playing Notre Dame, that's brutal. And frankly, it's even more reasons why it's going to discourage teams from wanting to play these tough non-conference games. It is what it is, folks. I mean, USC could finish 9-3, and then if they wouldn't have played Notre Dame, they could have been 10-2 and saying, maybe we need to look at whether we should be playing Notre Dame or not. That's just the reality of it, and it sucks for us college football fans because that's not what we want. Second thing for pessimism, Jaden Maiava, he likes to throw the ball to the other team. In 7 games, he had 6 interceptions, 11 TDs. USC was -3 in turnover margin. They're going to need to be better than that if they want a shot at making the playoffs. And then the final thing, JR, for pessimism, offensive line could hold them back. They did lose some transfers. It's not been up to par. Actually, that's what's held USC back, is really the offensive and defensive lines more than anything. So that's a concern of mine. But again, FanDuel likes USC as well. They have some swing games, but I really think they're a sleeper team, and who knows, they could even certainly do better than 8-4 potentially because they have the talent for it. And the other thing to say is they went 4-5 in one-score games, but 4 of those games, they were leading in the fourth quarter. If they would have just ran the damn football, they probably win 3 of those 4. So they were right there last year. They were more like a 9-4 team last year than a 7-6 team. So again, I'm pretty high on USC, to be frank.
Yeah, and they went 2-0 against the SEC, so I love USC. Go USC. Keep beating the SEC. I love that. I don't want to give too many thoughts here because I do want to take time to hit on all the other teams, and we're getting close to our time here. So let's go ahead and move on to Indiana.
So just Indiana, I see them 9-3 overall, 6-3 in the Big Ten. And with those 9 wins, it's great. As an Indiana fan, that's going to prove that last year was not a fluke. I think if you go 9-3 and 6-3 in the Big Ten, that's really good. The Week 4 game at home versus Illinois, everyone's talking about huge swing game for both teams. I actually see Indiana winning that game, but then loses at Iowa at the next week, right? So they and then losing at Oregon, losing at Penn State. The problem for Indiana that's going to come from that, potentially they get to the end of the year and they only have one win against a top 25 team, and that would be Illinois. If they can't beat Iowa, and certainly if they can't beat Oregon and Penn State, that means if they go 9-3, they are not making it into the playoffs. And it's why I hate their scheduling philosophy. I get that it's going to get them more wins in another home game, but they're not going to get the benefit of the doubt from any committee if you're not having a strength of schedule that's just good overall. So I think that could come back to bite them even in future years. Quickly, reasons for optimism. Key performers, Big Ten, all Big Ten like performers coming back at key positions. Wide receiver Elijah Surratt, linebacker Aiden Fisher, defensive end Mikel Kamara, defensive back D'Angelo Pond. So they have strong leaders, people who know how to win. Second, quarterback with the huge upside. Fernando Mendoza has first-round potential, according to some. That would be huge for Indiana. And third is defense should be strong again. Brian Haynes, who's the defensive coordinator, he was sought after by Ohio State for their open job. So I expect a salty defense. They were second in the nation last year. I think they'll be real good again. On the pessimistic side, tougher schedule, but not brutal, but tougher. So it won't be as easy. The offensive line, number 2 for pessimism. In the big games against elite teams, that offensive line needs to do better. Michigan ate them up in the second half. Ohio State had their way with them. And then that offensive line totally struggled against Notre Dame. So for Indiana to do what Cignetti would like to see him to do, that offensive line needs to be better. And then some concerns on the wide receiver depth. So, but I think 9-3, JR, would still be really good. As an IU grad, I'd be pretty damn pleased with that.
Yeah, I think the thing that not a lot of people take into account when they talk about the Illinois offensive line last year is just how limited mobility Curtis Rourke had. We had no idea that he had a torn ACL, or he was playing on a torn ACL pretty much the entire season until the end when they got eliminated, and that really changed my view on not necessarily the entire team, but I mean it changed my view on Curtis Rourke. I thought, man, that dude's awesome. He played on a torn ACL all season. I don't advise doing that, but man, to put his body on the line and do that every single week. Curtis Rourke's one of my favorite quarterbacks from last year. But in addition to that, they really had no ability to try and move the pocket or anything like that. Like Curtis Rourke basically was standing back there, and it was just that's who it was in one spot, because they really had no other option. So I do think Kirk Cignetti and Mike Shanahan are going to get more creative with Fernando Mendoza, using his feet, using his mobility this year. He's bigger. I think that Cignetti won't want to get him hurt, obviously, so I don't necessarily see them running QB power a bunch, but I do see them moving the pocket and helping out the offensive line a little bit more. Like I said, I picked 9-3 for Illinois, or for Indiana, but that's really the floor to me. I mean, they could go 8-4 possibly, so that's probably the floor actually. But this is kind of worst case scenario for me for Indiana. I acknowledge they could be an 11-1 team as well, and it's going to be probably somewhere in that range of 11-1 and 9-3.
Fair enough. Let's go to Illinois. Is anyone talking more about a team than Illinois? I mean, the media loves Illinois at this point too. I have them going 9-3 overall, 6-3 in the Big Ten, despite losing at Indiana there. But still a good season. Reasons for optimism, obviously, they won 10-3 last year and have the most returning production in the Big Ten. According to ESPN, 75%. And then Lindy's has them with 16 of 22 starters returning. So that's awesome. Luke Altmaier, experienced and efficient quarterback, another reason for optimism in his third year. He's just smart. He's not like uber talented, but 22 TDs with 6 interceptions. He's making the right decisions, and that's why Illinois is winning close games. They went 5-1 in those one-score games last year. And then they have one of the easiest schedules in the Big Ten next to Michigan, the second easiest Big Ten schedule, basically. They have 5 home games. They don't play Oregon, Penn State, or Michigan. And then they play 3 of those bottom feeders we talked about, Purdue, Maryland, and Northwestern. So really an easy schedule. That's a lot to do with why I think they'll go 9-3, because let's talk about reasons for pessimism. Statistically, last year, they were mediocre. 92nd in total offense, 68th in total defense. They averaged giving up more yards per game than they gained, and yet they went 10-3. It was kind of a miracle. It was from winning those one-score games, which is a credit to their coaching staff. I'm not saying Illinois was bad last year, people. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying they weren't really 10-3 team based on statistics in any way. So a lot of protection returns, but they better play a lot better. Thankfully, they have a pretty easy schedule, though. I'm concerned about their level and depth of talent overall. If they have some injuries, I mean, average recruiting class of 51. Yes, Bielema is a great developer, but usually that means you don't have a really strong bench. And so if they stay healthy, I think that bodes well. If not, they could be in trouble. So, 9-3, good year. I think a lot of that's from their easy schedule, JR. I don't love Illinois. I was a doubter last year. I didn't know how they were doing it. But credit to their coaching staff. They have a great coaching staff. I guess I'm just doubting the depth of their talent really more than anything. And they're going to take advantage of that favorable schedule to have a really good year again.
Hunger and grit, Jeff. Hunger and grit. That's what Bert Bielema gives you, and I love it. I think this Illinois team is going to go 10-2. That's what I picked. So only one win away from you there. Key for them is they just can't have those unnecessarily close games. You can't beat Rutgers on the final play of the game. You can't go to overtime against Purdue. You're not gonna save yourself for the entire season. You can have close games against Indiana, USC, Ohio State, Washington, but the other teams on here, like they did against Northwestern last year, you need to blow them out again. Like you can't play close against Rutgers at home. So I like this Illinois team a lot. I think 10-2 is where they're probably going to be at. Heck, Zach, I think, had him playing in the Big Ten championship game at 10-2, the way some of his tiebreakers played out and stuff. So, it's going to be a really interesting season for Illinois this year, and I'm really excited to see what they can do.
Yeah, the most talked about team, I think, for sure, other than Penn State. Penn State would be talked about more. All right, let's go to number 8, Nebraska. I have them exceeding expectations probably the most versus their over-under. FanDuel has them at 7.5. I have them going 9-3 overall. I like them a lot. 6-3 in the Big Ten. Basically, I think Dylan Raiola, 5-star quarterback, will make a big leap this year in his second year starting. And he has a better weapon with the Kentucky transfer. I have him actually starting 8-0 is the way it worked out, and then losing 3 in a row to USC at home, at UCLA, and at Penn State. So, and then finishing up with a win. Reasons for optimism: very favorable schedule, 5 home games, don't play Ohio State or Oregon, and they don't play Indiana and Illinois. So the teams they do play had a 37-44 record last year. Returning production, 69%. That's 4th best in the Big Ten as far as returning production. And they've recruited 25th nationally over the last. Their recruiting has not been the issue. It's been just coaching and winning close games, to be frank. And then the third reason for optimism, Dana Holgorsen, known commodity as an offensive coordinator. He's in year 2. I think he could take this offense to the next level and really magnify the jump that I expect Dylan Raiola to make at quarterback. Reasons for pessimism: inexperienced front 7 on defense, talented but young, basically. Special teams, they have a new kicker and punter. That matters. When you're bad at winning close games, special teams can be the difference in winning and losing one-score games. So that's why I'm bringing up special teams. And then just the history and the mental side. We've heard Nebraska's back before, but can they be mentally tough enough to start winning those one-score games? So the final thing, JR, is I pointed this out last week. Matt Rule in year 3, in his last 2 stops at Temple and Baylor, he had an average 4-game increase in the number of wins at both those schools. Temple went from 6-6 to 10-4, and Baylor in his 3rd year went from 7-6 to 11-3. So this is the 3rd year. I'm not saying they're going to increase their wins by 4, but 9-3 would be an increase of 2 wins. I think that's reasonable. And I feel pretty good about Nebraska actually going 9-3.
Let's hope they at least win 8 games because I will never believe in Nebraska ever again if they don't win at least 8 games this year. Not saying they need to start 8-0, but they need to win at least 8 games. So, all right, Jeff, finish us off with or one more thing. John says like number 5. Help us out here. Give us a like. We appreciate it. But we have more than 5 people watching right now. So if you guys could give us a like, we would appreciate that. All right, Jeff, finish us off. Iowa.
So Iowa I am going 8-4 overall, 5-4 in the Big Ten. 5-0 start, but then losing at Wisconsin and home to Penn State. Reasons for optimism, recruiting points to pretty good depth. They're 33rd in the nation the last 5 years. Returning production is pretty good. I expect a good defense. I know they lost a lot, but they still have DC, Phil Parker. They're not going to have the depth they have. As long as they stay healthy, I still think they're going to be good. And I think they're going to be helped by a better offense this year. Upgrade at key quarterback position. And then year 2 under Tim Lester, the offensive coordinator, I think you're going to see an improved offense. So, Mark Gronowski, he knows how to win, won 2 national titles at South Dakota State, over 10,000 yards passing, 93 TDs. He looks the part, right? He's thick built. I've seen him. And it's the best quarterback Iowa's had in a while. Lester, took them from 15 points a game to 28 points a game last year. That's a huge jump. And their offense went from 235 yards a game, which is just horrific, to 329. Still not where you want to see it, but just a big jump. I expect a significant improvement again. Pessimistic reasons, brutal schedule. No gimmies for Iowa. If the middle tier is really good, Iowa is going to struggle. That's why probably don't have a better record. Second hardest Big Ten schedule next to Wisconsin. The teams they're playing had a record of 47-34 last year. They're playing the top 5 of the top 8 FanDuel rated Big Ten potential title Big Ten favorites. They're playing. So just really tough. They don't play Ohio State, but they do get 5 home games on the good side. They have to find a way to replace Caleb Johnson. He had 1,500 yards. That's not going to be easy. They're going to be using 2 running backs to do that. And then turnover margin, they were plus 12 last year, tied for 8th best in the nation. That speaks to their defense. The year before that, they were -7. So they need to find a way to keep on getting those turnovers, get it to that better offense, and I think they'll be pretty good. And just the final thing, JR, Kirk Ferentz, consistent as hell. They've won at least 8 games, 9 straight years. They've made bowls 12 straight years and 23 of 24 years. Can't get any more consistent than that. He's 1 win away from tying Woody Hayes for the all-time Big Ten conference record wins in coaching. So, I think Iowa will be good. It's just they'll be brought down by that really tough schedule they have.
Yeah, I do think the aspect of this schedule that not a lot of people are talking about with Iowa is they do get Oregon, Penn State, and Indiana all at home. Now, they have to travel to USC and Nebraska, but those are not as bad of road trips as for other teams, with Iowa being close to the middle of the conference there. So I'm with you. It is the second or third hardest schedule in the Big Ten, but I think they have some opportunities there, right? Getting Indiana at home, getting Penn State and Oregon at home. I don't know if I like them to win all 3 of those games, but I definitely think it gives them some opportunity. And I would personally not be surprised if we see Iowa go 10-2 at all, because like you said, Kirk Ferentz is consistent. And who knows? Maybe this is a year where Kirk Ferentz does it. He shuts up all the Ohio State fans that I've talked to that say fire Kirk Ferentz, and he gets them to the playoffs. And who knows? Maybe they win a playoff game. I don't know. But I think it'd be so cool if that happened. A lot of people looking at the schedule saying, "Ah, going to be a tough year for Iowa. Can they get 8 wins? Can they get 9 wins?" And the offense looks better, and Gronowski is good enough. I just think it'd be a really cool story.
Yeah, they don't have a single gimme, and JR actually have them beating Oregon, pulling the upset against Oregon. The problem is, at Wisconsin, they play at USC, at Nebraska, even an early game at Rutgers. I mean, it's just there's no easy win, not a single one. Actually versus Michigan State, the second to last game of the year, that'd be the closest I would say in the Big Ten to like but that's not
And
like
they
a
lost to Michigan
guarantee.
State last year.
That's not like, yeah. So it's just a tough thing, but I do have them pulling off one upset against Oregon.
Yeah. That'd be pretty crazy. So, all right. Well, Jeff, anything else on your predictions?
No, that's good. We'll cover the other 9 next week. Like I said, a lot of this information on my website, bigjustfootball.com. I don't have a full write-up, but I've got some of the background information here. I think it's pretty intriguing. And yeah, these games are hard to choose, man. I'm hoping, JR, that middle tier for the Big Ten really is tough. So anytime I had a game like at Nebraska, I'm like, at Iowa, at Minnesota, it's like, how do I choose this one, right? That's what the Big Ten needs to be superior to the SEC, in addition to the blue bloods acting like blue bloods, right? If that all happens, we'll be the best conference in America.
Yeah, my fear is just if the middle cannibalizes itself too much, you only see 3 Big Ten teams in the playoffs, because the teams
Very real. Very
could
real.
go 9-3 and possibly make the playoffs. I don't know if they have tough enough schedules. Indiana's is tougher, but they're not really getting the strength of schedule metrics that they need, and Michigan's is not high up there either. Those are 2 of the few teams that could go 9-3. Nebraska as well. I don't think they get in if they're
Illinois.
9-3.
The same deal. Their schedule, unless they beat Ohio State, that's the key. If you can beat the blue blood, then you got
a chance.
You got that marquee game, right?
Yeah,
that's the key thing. So
but
I agree.
Even if Illinois beats Ohio State, though, you're still looking at 3 losses. You're looking at Indiana, USC, at Washington. You and I know those are tough games, but will the national media think that way? Will the strength of schedule metrics give them that credit? I don't think they will.
Well, yeah, the key is too, I have most of the non-conference game, I have the Big Ten winning almost everything. Mm-hmm. That needs to happen for, for the reputation of the conference. So, yeah, very intriguing.
Seek says, just say what the SEC says. We are so deep. We beat each other up. I've been saying it for 3 years now. And you know what? ESPN still doesn't believe me. So I still got to read articles by Bill Connolly where he's saying the top 40 most important players in the Big Ten. And he has just as many SEC quarterbacks that he does Big Ten players overall on that list. Stupid. Anyway, we're about up on time, so I don't want to start railing on ESPN, but Jeff's article is linked in the description, so you guys can go over there, check out. We only did the top half, but we're not like hiding it or anything. You guys can go and look at the bottom half, or you can just choose to be surprised next week. So in addition to the next week being the record predictions, guys, we're only 3 weeks away from Big Ten football. 3 weeks from today, we're going to have Big Ten football, and you're going to see Jeff next Tuesday with us, as me, Jeff, and Zach will go game by game, do all of our predictions game by game to talk through, and we'll vote and we'll figure out what our standings all together look like, and then you guys can be a part of that too. And then Jeff will join us the Sunday following that for our Big Ten season superlatives as well. We'll be talking sleeper teams, we'll be talking who's going to be the best players in the conference, all that kind of stuff. You'll get it there. So everybody, we appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. If you're on the podcast platform, give us a 5-star review. Helps us out. Like, share, subscribe, do all that stuff. We appreciate it, everybody. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.